Welcome back to another episode of First Use, and in today's video I'm going to go through the ruck battle between English and Xerri last night. It was really interesting, so I wanted to go back to when they last played against each other, which was in round 1 of this year. And what I noticed last night, and probably why I posted this on X, was because Tim English allowed Xerri to come across the line early in the year. It still happened a little bit last night, but what I noticed from Tim English is the ability to actually use his strength, which is his height and his athleticism, the ability to jump into his opponent. But what he also did was he tried to line up Xerri, and they were sort of going back and forth the whole night. So in this video, I'm going to show you clips from round 1 compared to what he did last night, and then I'm going to give you some strategies and how you do it on the whiteboard. I'm going to draw on the line, so whether you're a ruck, whether you're a coach, or whether you're midfield, how you adjust to lines and how you adjust to your opponent. So let's get into the clips now. Okay, so this is round 1 again, Bulldogs versus North. That's Xerri right there, and this is English. So what happened in round 1, and what's happened throughout the course of the year, and hence the reason why I said what I said on X, is because Tim English's strength is the ability to jump into his opponent, use his height, and maximise his strength, not get in a wrestle. So this is the line. Look where Xerri is, right on the line. So essentially when I think Tim English ends up coming towards him here, yeah, so you sort of give up your space. And what I noticed last night, and I'll show you clips, he was trying to line him up, but in this situation, it just becomes a stop play. Because now Ruck's allowed to come across the line, he just gets suffocated. And Xerri's such a big fella. He's like a Briggs. You've got to be able to jump in him. We're actually going to give him different angles. And then in this game, he had 51 hit-outs to 29. In last night's game, Xerri had 30 and Tim English had 29. So they minimised, even though North won the centre bounce clearances last night, they won by heaps in round 1. But at least they minimised it. But what I loved about Tim English is he wasn't getting stuck wrestling. He was changing his angles. He was trying to jump. He was doing stuff. He was throwing different things up. If you want to play finals footy, you've got to throw different options towards your opponent. So in this situation, he is lined up to him. So this is still in round 1. But what happens is in this situation, and this is what Tim English did last night, the difference between last night and what he did in round 1 is he actually tried to jump. In this situation here, he's got him lined up perfectly. He just has to hold. But what Tim English does is he goes too early. And then he's got no room to jump. So instead of actually holding and waiting for Xerri to come under the ball, and then he goes too early. He goes at the same time, and then he gets it, and then it becomes a stop play. So I'll show you what he changed last night in comparison to round 1. So as a comparison, Bulldogs are going this way, and in round 1, the clips I showed you, Bulldogs are going the right screen. So it just gives you a comparison. So here it is. So what happened was Xerri would start here and try to get across the line, but because Tim English held his position and then jumped late, this is what Xerri was forced to do, was try and line him up. That's a win for Tim English. That is a win. And this is what he was able to do. This is what I would like to see more of Tim English doing. The ability to jump. You're not going to win every tap, but what it does, it gives the opposition or your opposing ruck something else to think about. Oh, I've gone that angle, but he's lining me up. Because the fact is, if Xerri starts here and English starts there, Xerri just cuts his angle. As I've spoken to you before, it's a triangle effect, right? So imagine that's the drop of the ball. Xerri just cuts his angle. But if Xerri starts here and Tim English starts there, now that's a lot further for Xerri to go to cut his angle. And that's why in that previous clip I showed you, Tim English went too early. In this situation, he timed it, but he also put Xerri in 2 minds, and now he started coming there, which is a win for Tim English. and then he's able to win the tap. Same again. So now instead of Xerri starting here and cutting across, Tim English has put him in 2 minds, so he's actually starting down here now. So it's really good awareness, and I was really excited to see this from Tim English. He went hard forward, kicked 2 goals. He loves doing that, especially early in the games. But this is what I really love seeing him. Even though Xerri's going to grab it out of the ruck around the ground, he did that several times last night. But this is where I like the growth of Tim English, is the ability to change, but not get stuck in a wrestle with these bigger, tight ruckmen. In this situation, he just gets up. Even though I reckon probably Xerri wins this, he gets his knee up. He's maximising his strength, playing to his strengths. So that's what I really like from Tim English last night. He changed his angles. He jumped. He was jumping into his opponent. He wasn't trying to get in that wrestle. And yes, there is going to be times that happens. That's, both those rucks, they're professionals at what they do. But Tim English just didn't wave the white flag like he did in round 1, whereas he just allowed Xerri to come across the line and make it a wrestle. He changed his angles. He straightened him up, lined him up, and then jumped into him. All right, so let's get in the whiteboard, and I'll show you some different angles that you can do when you come up against big-bodied rucks. All right, here's my centre circle. So what happened at the start of the year? Xerri would start here, and English would start there. That's perfect. So as I said to you before, the triangle, that's the drop of the ball. Right? So Xerri would just come across, get front position, and then English's momentum would push Xerri to the ball. That's why he had 50 hit-outs to 25. Dominated. And that was also around the ground. But the difference what he did last night for Tim English, instead of when Xerri started there, he started there. So now this is a lot further for Xerri to come across the line, and it also puts himself in a vulnerable position, because if Tim English is coming this way with his knee, it's going straight through Xerri. So it makes it a lot harder for him to come there. So then when Xerri started here, Tim English started here. But as I showed you in those clips, the difference was Tim English held. He didn't come in early. Because you could see a few times where he went early, went at the same time as Xerri, but where did they meet? They met at the point at the ball drop, which then allowed Xerri to use his body. But what Tim English was able to do when Xerri started there, he held back, then he went hard. That's where you saw a few times last night where he got his knee up and jumped into him. So if you're coming up against big-bodied ruck, what tends to happen if they stand there, and it has to change as well in relation to your mid. So, for instance, if you're going right a screen, just let's play an example, and you're the ruck here, and then so you've set up. Say you've got the blocker there, you got the sweeper there, and you got the receiver there. So your hit zone is here. So just use it as an example. If the opposition ruck comes there, that's a really hard spot for the ruck. Right? So in this situation, he might need to come here. That means that your hit zone might change to here. So you've got to adapt. You've got to switch. You've got to be able to be flexible in those situations. And that's why it becomes really important. So the receiver, he might actually then come over here. It's important to keep the sweeper there though, because you're still trying to shark the opposition taps. And the blocker might actually come around here. So the idea of the blocker is to try and push his opponent this way to allow space for this. So the receiver might come here, and then he might wrap around and go into this position. So there's many other ways to go, but at the end of the day, you've got to make it easier for your ruck, especially if I'm working on a right-hander here. So what Tim English was doing when Xerri was starting, as I said, is he was coming from this position. If he starts there, it's a lot easier for Xerri to get across. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you are an athletic ruck and you're coming up against a big ruck, they could start there. So you've got to start here. You always got to try and line them up. If they start here, you come over there. So you want to try and line them up. Ideally, if you're a right-handed ruck and you lead with your right knee, you want to get them slightly on your right hand side, so you can loop and come and get your knee into them. If they start here, then you start there. So you always, it's a bit of cat and mouse, but you just don't want to get yourself in this situation where they can come across the line, cut your angle, becomes a stop play, then they just hit it forward or hit it wherever they want to. So this is what I was really impressed with what Tim English did last night. So a little bit of Ruck 101, but I really think that what Tim English did last night was a really good step in the right direction for him in the centre bounce. For too long, he's been stuck, he's been negated because he's accepted the opposition ruck coming across the line. By him lining Xerri up last night, it provided an opportunity for him to actually take charge, for him to jump into his opponent, and that's what he has to actually put in place. You got to have plan B, you have plan A, plan B, plan C when you're playing finals footy, because everything sort of changes and everything's on heat. So that was really good from Tim English last night.